All right, here's a lesson for note 6-2, which is solving literal equations. So first I'm going to start with just a little review of graphing lines. So remember, when we graph a line, we start by graphing the y-intercept, which is -4, and that goes on the y-axis. So that's going to be right here. So this is our y-intercept. Then our slope is a number in front of x. So our slope is 2/3, and remember that's rise over run. So that means we're going to go up 2 and then to the right 3. So from this line, we're going to go up 2 to the right 3, and we're going to repeat that until we reach the end of our graph. And we're going to do the same thing in the other direction. However, we're going to go down and left. So we're going to repeat that pattern, down and left, and that's our line. Okay, remember we also learned how to graph lines in standard form. And to do that, we solve for our x and our y-intercept. To solve for our x-intercept, the first equation we can create is 8x equals 24. And the second equation is going to be 4y equals 24. And now we're just going to solve for x. All right, so to solve for x here, I'm going to divide by 8. 24 divided by 8 is 3. So my first x, or my x-intercept, is 3, 0. And we're going to do the same thing for the other equation. So 4y equals 24. To undo the 4, multiply by 4, we're going to divide by 4. 24 divided by 4 is 6. So y equals 6. So my y-intercept is going to be 0, 6. So then we can graph those 2 points. So 3, 0, and 0, 6. From here, we can basically continue that pattern if we wanted to continue graphing it, right? So to go from one point to the other, I go down 6, right 3. So we can do the same thing. Down 6, right 3. Down 6, right 3. And do the same thing in the other direction. Up 6, left 3. So that gives a little bit more to create our line here. So that's one way to graph a line. That one was written in standard form, but now that we know how to solve an equation, we can actually rewrite that equation in slope-intercept form and then graph it using slope-intercept form, which is what we did for the first problem. So to write it in slope-intercept form, we know that that's y equals mx plus b. So right now the equation is written in standard form. So to solve for this in slope-intercept form, we need to solve for y. So we need to get y by itself. So the things that we need to get rid of, in terms of what is happening to y, it's being multiplied by 4. And then we're also adding 8x. So we're going to undo, starting from the bottom, we're going to undo the adding 8x by subtracting. So subtract 8x. And whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. Okay, so notice how I'm not writing it underneath the 24 because those are not like terms, so we cannot subtract those. So then on the left-hand side, we're left with 4y. And on the right-hand side, we have 24 and negative 8x. However, we know in slope-intercept form, generally we write the x term first, so I'm going to write it as negative 8x plus 24. So we undid the adding 8x. Now we're going to undo the multiply by 4 by dividing by 4. So divide this by 4, and we're going to divide everything on the right by 4. So that gets rid of the 4 in front of the y, so now we're left with y. So we're dividing both terms by 4, so negative 8 divided by 4 is negative 2. So that's negative 2x, and then 24 divided by 4 is 6. So from here, we can graph this using slope-intercept form. My y-intercept is 6, which is what we found using the x-intercepts, and then my slope is negative 2, which means I'm going to go down 2 to the right 1, down 2 to the right 1, down 2 to the right 1. And as you see, we end up at our x-intercept, which is what we graphed at 3, 0. So in this particular lesson, we're still solving equations. However, they're literal equations. So a literal equation is an equation where each letter represents something specific. So in the previous example, we knew that m represented slope, b represented the y-intercept, and then we know that x represents any x value on that line. So these equations will have majority of the terms in the equation will be letters. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So it says solve for x. So the first equation for part A, this is just a regular equation because it has numbers and only one variable. So we're solving for x, so we need to get x by itself. So what's happening to x is it's being multiplied by 2, and then we're adding 8 to it. So first thing we need to undo is the adding 8, and we're going to undo that by subtracting 8. So 16 minus 8 is 8. And on the right-hand side, we're left with just 2x. And then the next step here, we got to undo the multiply by 2, so we're going to divide both sides by 2. So we're left with x equals 8 divided by 2, which is 4. So the second equation, part B, is a literal equation. It's, in fact, the equation for a line because all the terms are letters. We're still going to solve for x. But if we notice, the same thing is happening to x. It's being multiplied by something, in this case, m, multiplied by m, and then we're adding b. So to solve for x, we have to undo those things. So the first thing we're going to undo is we're going to undo the adding b, and we're going to do that by subtracting b. So here's the thing with literal equations. We can't do y minus b because those are not the same terms. They have to be the same letter. So since we cannot subtract those, we're just going to write it as y minus b. It's also okay to write it as negative b plus y. Either one is okay in this case. And then on the right-hand side, what we have left is m times x. So we undid the adding b, so now we need to undo the multiplying by m. And to undo multiply by m, we're going to divide by m. So now we have x by itself. So we have y minus b over m. Another way you could write this, which would still be correct, you could write it as y over m minus b over m. So you could separate that if you wanted. Just know that when we divide by m, we're dividing both terms by m. But in this case, this one looks a little neater, so I'm going to box this as my final answer. Okay, for A, in this problem, for these problems, we're solving for W. Okay, and in terms of what is happening in W, two things is happening. It's being multiplied by two different numbers. It's being multiplied by 3, it's being multiplied by 2. In this case, we can actually undo those at the same time. Well, 3 times 2 we know is 6. So we can divide by 6, and that's going to get rid of that, and we can divide by 6 as well here. So that means W is equal to, well, 6 divided by 6 is equal to 1. So my final answer here is actually just W equals 1. So for part B, we have a literal equation. It says LWH equals V. That's actually the formula for the volume of a rectangular prism, length times width times height. So we're going to solve for W. So just like we did in this problem, we're going to divide by what's being multiplied. In this case, we can divide by length and width, length and height at the same time. That would cancel out the L, it would cancel out the H. We end up with width equals the volume divided by length times height. Okay, now let's look at a couple more problems. So from the practice problems number 3 and number 4. So number 3, it says that we're solving for K. So we need to get rid of everything surrounding K. So in terms of what is happening to K, it's being multiplied by H and J. And then we're also adding 2 to it. So first thing we need to do is we need to get rid of that adding 2. And we're gonna undo that by subtracting 2. So we're left with HJK equals, since we can't subtract those, it's just going to be R minus 2. And the next thing we're going to do is we're going to undo multiplying by HJ. So I'm going to divide by HJ. With literal equations, it's pretty easy to do that in one step. So I'm going to divide. That gets rid of the HJ. Then we're left with K, which is what we're solving for. And our final answer is going to be R minus 2 over HJ. All right, number 4, we're solving for C. So we need to get rid of everything next to C. So there's two things happening to C. We're adding D and we're dividing by F. So first thing we're going to undo the divided by f first. And we're going to undo that by multiplying by f. Okay, so then that's going to cancel out the f in the denominator because f divided by f is 1. So we're left with c plus d is equal to gf. Now we can undo the plus d by subtracting d. So then we're left with c equals gf minus d.